The government and official media denounces the protesters as anarchists, conspiring with Western powers to destabilize the country.
Yeah, I'd like to tell the world that Ali Abdullah Saleh is our father, the father of all Yemenis. We want peace. We don't want terrorism. We don't want a war, a civil war between Yemenis.
3 weeks since the start of the popular demands, attempts to broker a deal between the president and the opposition have failed. Saleh wants to stay in power till 2013. His opponents say that his mere presence is an obstacle to real change. Hashim Al-Barra, Al Jazeera, Sana'a.
A funeral service has been held for Pakistan's murdered minorities minister. Shahbaz Bhatti was gunned down for opposing a law that imposes the death penalty for imposing Islam. A report from Islamabad coming up. And rallying for reform Indonesian style, the lessons from a former dictatorship that's now a developing democracy. Do stay with us.
Welcome back. First, starting in Japan as well as into the Korean Peninsula. We're looking at a fairly nice day on Saturday. That's all going to change, though, as we go into the next couple of days. So we got some weather coming in from China. As you can see here, we're looking at partly cloudy to mostly sunny conditions from most of the region on Saturday. But that, like I said, is going to change. Take a look what's happening as we come with that rain shower activity out of the southwest. That's going to be a big problem, bringing some very heavy rain showers, not only for Japan, but of course across most of China as we go from Saturday as well as into Sunday. Notice how that green area starts to really envelop most of China. We are looking at rainy conditions for Shanghai at 10 degrees there. Hong Kong, partly cloudy conditions, about 23 degrees, but down to the south, we're looking at 31 for Manila with some rain showers in their forecast. Now, rain showers are going to be a big problem across the northern part of Australia as well. Right here, we're going to be seeing in the Northern Territory some flood warnings in effect. That's going to start to move towards Queensland over the next day or so. Brisbane, about 27 degrees. You're going to be warm, but we have a frontal boundary right here. You can see just to the south, Sydney at 21, as well as Melbourne at 23 degrees. And for Christchurch, we do want to take a look at their forecast over the next day. We're looking at some improving conditions for them. We are going to see some rain showers on Sunday. By the time we get to Monday, that should all be out of their forecast for them.
What Gaddafi has done, he dismantled or destroyed the system in the country.
As chaos and violence sweep across Libya.
They're living through fear, they're living through a nightmare.
They're using ammunition, live ammunition.
Al Jazeera hears from those who have lived in fear of Gaddafi's regime.
We don't want him to leave. We want to arrest him. 42 years is too much.
Libya, a state of terror. At this time on Al Jazeera.
Welcome back. The top stories here on Al Jazeera. Muammar Gaddafi's forces have launched a powerful attack to try to take back the closest opposition-held city to the Libyan capital. AlJazeera was the focus of intense fighting as pro-Gaddafi forces moved on the town. This footage was uploaded onto a social media website. One local doctor says at least 13 people were killed during a prolonged artillery barrage. And these are pictures that are live on Libyan state television from the capital, Tripoli, which are organised crowds waving banners and flags in support of Muammar Gaddafi on the day that his government continued to try to retake rebel-held towns and conducted airstrikes for the third day in a row. And we are keeping an eye on this just in case Muammar Gaddafi decides to address the crowds there. We know that that's one of the squares that he's spoken from during this uprising for 2 weeks. And there are reports coming in that rebels have taken control of Libya's key Mediterranean oil port, Ras Lanouf. It followed a battle between pro- and anti-Gaddafi forces. Helicopters with machine guns fired on rebel positions, according to witnesses. Now, several thousand Pakistani Christians have gathered to bury the murdered Minorities Minister Shahbaz Bhatti. He was shot dead on Wednesday in Islamabad after calling for reforms to Pakistan's controversial blasphemy law. AlJazeera's Kamal Haider has the story.
Last rites for a man who predicted his own death. Shahbaz Bhatti's coffin, draped in the flag of the All Pakistan Minority Alliance, was brought to Islamabad's main church for a final goodbye. Amidst tight security, mourners gathered outside Fatima Church to pay homage to a man who championed minority rights and spoke of reform of Pakistan's controversial blasphemy law. Senior government officials and foreign dignitaries also paid their respects.
The Pakistan flag is a symbolic that the green side and the white side. The white side represents minorities.
For Pakistan's Christians, the loss of Shahbaz Bhatti is great for some. He's now a martyr. His body was then flown to his native village in the Punjab for burial. Shahbaz Bhatti is not the first victim of the controversy over the blasphemy law, and the real fear is that he may not be the last. Kamal Haider, AlJazeera, Islamabad.
Politicians in Taiwan say they feel threatened by China's plan to boost defence spending by 13%. Beijing played down the island nation's concerns, but Taiwan is urging the United States and Europe to sell them more weapons to develop their own arsenal. China says this year's defence budget will total 600 billion yuan. That's $91.5 billion US dollars.
There is the development of stealth fighters, continuous production of submarines, plus the nuclear-capable submarines, and the making of aircraft carriers. They are likely to have the first aircraft carrier made in the next few years. Then they will make more.
Indonesia is recognised as having one of the more open societies in Southeast Asia, just 13 years after mass protests helped to bring down President Suharto. He'd ruled for 32 years with the backing of the military. Analysts say Indonesia made a success of its revolution by reaching out to all groups, including Islamists. Step Vassen reports.
Democracy, Indonesian style. Protests every day, like this one, against corruption. Still rampant, despite the revolution 13 years ago. Fahri Hamza was one of the students who led the protests against Suharto in 1998. Thousands of protesters had occupied the parliament building, demanding the dictator quit. After weeks of heated protests in which more than 1,000 people died, Suharto resigned.
This was the place where we celebrated. As soon as Suharto stepped down, everyone jumped in the fountain and started to have a party for the whole day.
Indonesia became the world's third largest democracy, and the former activist became part of it as a member of parliament for Indonesia's most prominent Islamic party, the Prosperous Justice Party, affiliated with Egypt's Muslim Brotherhood.